So we're going to talk about Dagger, which I see. I want to make a note that uh, the title, which leads you to think there must be some sort of betrayal a la Shakespeare. And this play really destroys Shakespeare. This is sort of like the sort of plays that O'Neill would write using the Greeks in mind. And the distance between Shakespeare and this play is even greater than between O'Neill and the Greeks. Um, I This is probably my favorite play outside of the Kubla Khan play that we're going to talk about later. I remember you telling me about it. You saying that you were not necessarily struggling, but taking your time throughout this play. That you wanted to make it more dense, and that when I read it, I wouldn't necessarily see that you were quote unquote struggling. And I really didn't. It's a very well put together play. I can see different layers on all of the characters, and even some of the side characters are very well defined. Down to just a few lines, you get not necessarily a whole character's life, but you get a sense of the character, like with Donald Mall.
Well, yeah, and just before you go on, I just wanted to say that the thing about this is one of those plays that only someone who is a great poet or truly great poet who wrote great poetry, not like people say Tennessee Williams was a poet of the theater, but a truly great poet. The way I deploy not only my but other quotes from other poems in here really heightens attention. This is something that I do better than anyone who's ever written for drama has ever done, is deploy poems, whether they're my poems or even if you want to consider the lyrics of songs poems, as in the musical that I did. But this is one of those that really does use poetry well.
And it begins with you reading your poem War, which is supposedly one of your early great poems. We meet the character named Desi or Desdemona.
Yeah, Desi.
Then we also meet this Patty Mildred Flexner, the talentless Desdemona.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too. Desi apparently has some talent, whereas there's this talentless nominal doppelganger out there that doesn't really bring anything to it. We don't get to really know her that well, but we do get Desi's resentment towards her for taking the same name and then having them associate this talentless hack with her who has at least some poetic talent.
Well, this is no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You end up having a sexual relationship with her. And then there's a scene towards the end of the play that reminds me of the Super 7 with the, what the hell is his name?
Elias Walker?
Yeah, Elias Walker, where he breaks up with his girlfriend at the end of it. Or she breaks up with him, rather.
Yeah. Well, basically, this is one of those things that I really almost just totally took from real life. I mean, obviously, I had to reconstruct situations and whatnot. But I mean, I had gone in the mid-90s, fall of '94, to this place called the New Power Generation, which was the name of Prince, the rock star's band. And Prince lived in Minneapolis or in the Twin Cities area. And on Sunday afternoons from like noon to 2, they had poetry readings. And at the time, I would have been 29, 30. And most of the kids were a bit younger. There was a few older people and a few older people just by 2 or 3 years. But I was one of the older ones. And there were these two Desdemonas. There was the fat white Desdemona who was trying to be all hip hop and whatnot. And then there was the black Desdemona, who I called Desi. And I never really knew her real name. I think it was Denise Miller, like an actress from the 70s and 80s. We just sort of hit it off for about 6 weeks, from about a week or two before Christmas till right before my birthday. And, she lived right in what was known as the Uptown area. That was the artsy area of Minneapolis, the equivalent of the boho in New York, the Soho or boho area in New York, where I knew this Carissa Drake. And yet she was not like the Carissa Drake character. I mean, when I say she had the Desdemona with an A, the white Desdemona, was utterly talentless. She was nothing. She was a poseur, and she came after the Black Desdemona, and she's still in the Twin Cities area, as far as I know. But the Black Desdemona sort of just she was the archetype of these young people who are in the arts, who a year or two passes and they go from, oh, I want to be a poet, to I want to be a dancer, to, oh, I want to do uh, uh, knitting, to whatever, and they just sort of, with the world ends not with a bang but a whimper. Their thing that makes them interesting is it just seeps away.